collected them extensively through most of his life,
Right.
and he passed them on to Mum now that he's gone, and we're still learning about what they are and where they're from, really.
Now, what we've got here, can you see that it's set with wood in the background, and again, just underneath,
On the bottom.
set with wood there. And the scene, it's an oak tree, and there are soldiers underneath on horseback,
Yeah.
and right in the middle there is the future King Charles II, when he hid in the Boscobel Oak.
The Royal Oak.
That's
Something
it,
like- yeah.
absolutely. A date of this one, especially with these sorts of mouldings, that's got to be, I would have said, about 1720. Early part of the 18th century. They're very rarely marked. I don't suppose, no, can't see a sign of a mark. Have you any ideas of values?
I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess.
Right.
Quite.
I would reckon, as it's one of the more unusual Boscobel ones, somewhere around £2,000–3,000.
Not sure quite what to say. I mean, these are little things, but they seem to be worth
You've got more?
more than money.
You've got more. Now, that is marvellous. Now, what we should find in there, yes, there we are, is that pierced grill. Do you know what it is?
Snuff? Scent?
Close. It's, in fact, a vinaigrette, and there should be a little sponge underneath here. Ah, no, there shouldn't be petals
dearie.
underneath there.
Right.
Who put the petals in?
I think
So-
that could be Mother.
Mother, right. But there should actually be a sponge inside there, and the sponge will be soaked in aromatic. So your idea of perfume, absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah.
Nathaniel Mills is the maker, lovely maker to find. Gosh, value on that. Mid-19th century, of course, the date of it. I think you'd have to insure that one for, what, about £1,500?
For a little thing like that?
For a little thing like that, absolutely.
All right, yeah, yeah.
Now, this one should date from the... Yes, here we are. Yes, we're in the middle years again of the 19th century. And the maker there, that's... the maker's mark's only partially showing, in fact. We've got a crown, I can just see the eye. The quality of the work that we've got here, with that mark, I'm sure that must be Hunt and Roskell. And this is absolutely the sort of piece that Hunt and Roskell would have produced.
Yeah.
Because as a firm, they're fascinating because they actually go back to Paul Storr,
Right.
who, of course, is one of the most famous of all English goldsmiths.
Yeah.
And gilded inside. And, of course, these are very collectible. The sort of value, gosh, for this one, I would suggest you think in terms of about £10,000. What else have you got?
A bit flabbergasted by that.
Do another box.
Let's go small again, yeah, another little box. Yeah.
Gosh, that is a very rare box. 3-compartment snuff box. It's beautiful just looking at it like that. The effect,
Very well crafted, isn't it?
superb. No maker's marks on it. Again, would be more. It's almost too much to ask that you have a maker's mark as well. But it doesn't matter. I mean, that is a fabulous box. The mouldings around there, absolutely super. And these scenes, various gentlemen in 18th century dress. Date of it, of course, about 1740. No marks, but it doesn't really matter. I
not
mean, this
really-
absolutely screams at you
Right.
that it is the most wonderful mid-18th century box. Tricky one on value. I would have said somewhere around £3,000. Could be more. What else have you got? Thistle cups from the shape.
Right.
These were mostly produced at the end of the 17th, early 18th century. And, oh gosh, yes, that's even better. The mark just there is actually for Glasgow.
Right. It's very faint, isn't it?
Very faint. It's actually a tree. There's a salmon across the trunk. There's a bird sitting on top of it, and there's a bell. I mean, there's this
You can
quite...
see all that just in there.
Well,
You know this.
I know what the mark
Right.
should be like, and I can
Right.
see part of the mark. We've got the date letter S, and that's actually for Glasgow 1698. Right? And the maker, WC, that's William Clark of Glasgow. I mean, your father really did have the most wonderful eye.
Took a long time.
But then
spent
the
a long-
best collections are like that.
They're built slowly, I think.
Built slowly,
Yeah.
just getting choice items all the time.
Yeah.
Not being a magpie. So, rare, Glasgow, which is rare at this sort of period. Value-wise, we're looking there at about £5,000. Right, what else?
I don't know that I'd be able to drink out of it now that you've said this. Right, now this one.
Oh, gosh. Oh, now do you know what this is?
I wouldn't like to hazard a guess.
I'm not surprised. Pieces like this can be jolly difficult. I think this could be an early wine taster. Now, this decoration, it's where they've actually punched. They get a thing looking a little bit like a nail, and this is full of pitch inside, and they
Right.
literally just
Punch it onto
hammer
a
the
soft-
decoration
right. Yeah,
onto
yeah.
the surface. This is going to be early 17th century. Let's have a look and see. Oh gosh, yes. We're 1607 in this case, so that's King James I. Now that is exceptionally rare.
It's a bit old, isn't it?
English wine tasters are rare, and I mean, if you find an 18th century one, that's quite
Good enough.
something.
Yeah, right.
If you find a late 17th century one, you get very excited. At auction, people would fight for it.
Right.
It's the sort of thing when it comes up for sale, it's perhaps going to be the only chance as a collector that you're ever going to
guide,
have
yeah.
to acquire it. Very difficult piece to put a value on. It's in superb condition. And if it is an early wine taster, then it's going to be very valuable. I would say one should be thinking in terms of, what, at least 12 to 15,000 pounds.
Okay. For something, it just doesn't seem worth it for something so small.
I think I'm probably right in saying there are about one or two known to exist.
There's 3 now.
Got to be York, if it's not Scandinavian.
Right.
The form is Scandinavian. This very rounded form that you find, but typical of York at this sort of period. Well, sort of period, any idea for this one?
1600 maybe? Mark would
Yes.
say a date, yeah?
Well, that mark is the York mark, which looks really like a plate of spaghetti. It's one of the most impossible marks to you've really got to know what you're looking at to
work
identify
out.
that.
Yeah.
The early mark of York, the 17th century and earlier mark, is actually half a fleur-de-lis and half a leopard's head joined together. Date letter there that's a script K. And in fact, this one is 1664. And the maker, that's the other way up, that's William Maskell, who actually he got his freedom in 1664, so this must have been one of the first pieces
A
that he made.
celebrated piece. Yeah.
So, a York tankard of this form, value, I think there we're looking at 15 to 20,000 pounds.
Oops. We better get some insurance next, I think.
Ooh. Right. Yes. This tankard is of a very early form. If you go right back into the early part of the 17th century, tankards are a little bit taller than this and have an absolutely flat lid.
Right.
Then, around the time of the Civil War, 1640s, the height is reduced, and you start to get this step in the lid. And that's known as a single step tankard.
Right, just because it's...
Because of that single step in the lid. Right. And this skirt, that's known as the skirt, is again typical of the earlier part of the 17th century, first half into the middle years of the 17th century. We can only actually see the beginning of the maker's mark.
Almost like it wasn't stamped hard enough.
It's not that he hasn't stamped it hard enough, he's gone in at a slight angle.
All right, so not all of it is...
Right, so it's not all showing. In fact, I do recognise that maker's mark, and the other letter is an S, which we can't actually see there.
Right.
Then again, it's London, with the leopard's head, and the lion passon, of course, there. Now, the date letter, in this case, it's for 1654. Now, that is great, because this, of course, is in the Commonwealth period. And amongst the most desirable of silver to find today is Commonwealth silver.
Yeah.
Generally, as we've got it here, often one will find it intensely plain. Not actually because of the Puritans. A lot of people say that Commonwealth silver was plain because of the Puritans. What it really was down to was that they, because of the Civil War, had gone out of the way of spending money on decoration.
Yeah.
It's a lovely size as well. On the smaller side, which is good, actually. That makes it more desirable. Value of this one, I would suggest, if you're going to insure this, certainly to think in terms of somewhere around 30 to 40,000 pounds.
I can't afford that much insurance, but I think we'll have to somehow.
That is the most wonderful piece.
Well, I'm glad you know what you're on about, as it were.
It has been wonderful for me just to see these marvellous pieces.
Certainly that one.
Absolutely. What a collection. I mean, full marks to your father. He obviously was a great connoisseur.
Somehow.
And here are still more items from that same collection. And I must say how marvellous it is not only to see the finest collection of silver we've ever found on an Antiques Roadshow in 16 years, but to prove yet again the programme's amazing capacity to produce the unexpected. Who would have thought that we would find all this in our visit to Crawley today? So it really has made a wonderful programme for us. Next week, we're north of the border. We're taking the Antiques Roadshow to Scotland, and I very much hope that you will join us then. Until then, from everyone here in West Sussex, goodbye.
The team will tell you that the item we're most often asked about is that astonishing collection of silver that was found under the bed and brought into our show at Crawley in 1993. This glittering array had Ian Pickford foaming at the mouth, and the drama had only just begun. We were about to unlock a family secret.
About 2 hours before we were going to go, I said, "Hey, Mum, what about that box of silver metalwork that we found? Why don't we take some of them bits?" And then I showed Ian the contents of this bag. His tongue fell out of his mouth, his jaw hit the floor, and that's where it started.
My father collected them extensively through most of his life, and he passed them on to Mum. Now that he's gone, we're still learning about what they are and where they're from, really.
It's a stirrup cup. Now, this one should date from the... Yes, here we are. Yes, we're in the middle years again of the 19th century. My feeling when I saw the stirrup cup was, wow. I would have been excited if it had been a normal stirrup cup. We've never had one, I think, before or since on the roadshow. The sort of value, gosh, for this one, I would suggest you think in terms of about £10,000. What else have we got? Well, as the pieces were coming out, I think my thought was, gosh, what next? And as we were delving deeper and deeper into the bag, suddenly there would be another great treasure would come out.
Right, now this one.
Oh, gosh. Oh, now do you know what this is?
I wouldn't like to hazard a guess.
Pieces like this can be jolly difficult. I think this could be an early wine taster. Let's have a look and see. Oh, gosh, yes. We're 1607 in this case, so that's King James I. Now that is exceptionally rare.
It was kind of hard to take in, really, at the time, to think that we had a little James I wine tasting cup that was, you know, it was the fact that I think it was the fact that it was that old, that, to me, that rocked my boat.
I would say one should be thinking in terms of, what, at least 12 to 15,000 pounds. Valuing the collection was tricky. I mean, obviously it was easier to deal with the objects that were actually there, but having sort of discussed other things that were in the collection that I didn't actually see, we did sort of come to an idea that there may well be somewhere approaching £250,000 worth.
The Hobbs family were just as shocked when they learned the enormous value of the collection. It revealed a side of their dad's life they'd known nothing about.
It wasn't really till after he died that we found various things that led us to believe he'd kind of led a double financial life.
It was also inconspicuously, hidden, this silver. We didn't know really a lot of it existed until we started looking in bags, because he was a bit of a magpie, Dad. I don't think my mother knew a great deal about the silver. She knew about some of it, but not all of it. And I think it made her quite cross, because she looked back over the years, I think, and saw, well, I needn't have scrimped and saved, because actually the money was there. But it wasn't, never went her way. She used to feed us all and pay all the bills, and how she ever did it, I just don't know.
I didn't feel like we were going without at the time. No, not really, no. It just felt normal. If we ran out of oil, well, we just put a jumper on and ran around a bit more.
Harold Hobbs was a man of modest means, a probate clerk by day, but in his spare time a passionate lover of silver, constantly seeking to add to his collection. He became master of the Tin Plate Workers, a city livery company. We've discovered that he donated several important items to their collection. They've now agreed to open their vaults for the first time to show Harold's children more of their father's secret silver.
Now, I've got some pieces here which I think you'll be particularly interested in, because
Look at these.
what's on the table are the pieces that your father actually gave to the tin plate workers.
Wow,
So,
fantastic.
it gives a whole new complexion to your
is.
father's collection.
Quite an eye-opener.
And you've never seen these before?
I've seen two of the pieces.
Which
but
ones have you
I've seen the wager cups,
Right.
but I've never seen the spoons.
No. You realise those are very important to you,
No.
because what your father did was that when each of you were born, he actually gave one to the company, rather than giving it to you.
Oh, that was very nice of him.
Yeah. Cheers, Dad.
I find it fascinating that the spoons, which were very personal in a sense to you, that you were even unaware of their existence.
Let alone seen them before.
And none of the others had you been told about?
No.
Yeah. But isn't it fascinating as well, though? It really does sort of tie up with his whole collecting thing, which was very much secretive, and this was...
Another secret.
Another secret.
Richard and Carolyn were stunned to see these new treasures. Happily, their dad's collection has made up for some of the hardships they'd suffered. 6 months after the roadshow, we woke up to the news that Mrs. Hobbs was about to sell some of the pieces.
Well, at this very moment, Richard Hobbs, his mum Margaret and the family are at Christie's auction room.
Don't you find it frustrating to know that this wealth was sitting there under the bed?
Well, no, what's done's done. You get up and get on with the next thing. You don't hark back, you don't say if only, because you can't bring it back, you can't alter what has happened, what has been. And now, look, we've got these lovely things, and life will probably be a bit easier in the future.
I think Mum probably saw it as a bit of a pension fund. She went to Antarctica and Florida and just places that she wanted to go and hadn't been. She went on a missionary to Africa to help some school children and refugees and things.
I mean, it was amazing stuff. I mean, it was really stunning, a lot of it. But why? Because it was a passion, I suppose. And passions do take over, don't they? They take over lives.
Revealed at last, the story of Harold Hobbs's secret passion.